Kyung-ho sat in his chair and watched the alien creatures talk. The big meeting room was made of clear crystal that sparkled in the light. All around him, strange beings from across the galaxy spoke in voices that his translator turned into words he could understand. This was the Galactic Council. It was the most important place in the known universe. Here, 847 different alien species made decisions that affected trillions of lives. Kyung-ho was the only human in the room. He had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now. In that time, he had learned many things about the galaxy. Most of them made him angry. Today was no different. A tall gray creature with 4 arms stood at the center of the room. This was Overlord Vextar from the Velkari Empire. His red eyes glowed as he spoke about something he called the expansion doctrine. "The 12 systems in question require our guidance," Vextar said. His voice was cold and sharp. "These primitive worlds cannot govern themselves properly. The Velkari Empire offers protection and order." Kyung-ho knew what those words really meant. He had read the secret reports. The Velkari Empire wanted to take over 12 star systems. They would steal the planet's resources and make slaves of the people who lived there. But they used nice words to hide their real plans. Other aliens in the council nodded. Some looked worried, but most seemed bored. They had heard this kind of talk many times before. An alien that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke next. This was Elder Thys from the Thylorian people. The Thylorians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They thought they were very wise. "The Thylorian collective has concerns," Elder Thys said. His voice sounded like wind through trees. "However, we understand that sometimes difficult choices must be made for the greater good." Kyung-ho's hands tightened into fists under his desk. The greater good. He had heard that phrase too many times. It was what the aliens said when they wanted to ignore suffering and death. A bug-like creature with 6 arms clicked its mandibles. This was the representative from the Chitauri hive. "Order must be maintained," it said. "Chaos helps no one." More aliens spoke. They all said basically the same thing. They were worried about the Velkari plan, but they would not stop it. They talked about stability and keeping the peace. They talked about trade routes and mining rights. They did not talk about the millions of people who would die. Kyung-ho looked at the data pad in his hands. On it were pictures and videos that made him sick. Velkari prison camps where aliens were worked to death. Children taken from their families to be slaves. Entire cities burned because the people would not surrender. His aide, So-min, sat behind him. She was a quiet woman who rarely spoke during these meetings, but Kyung-ho knew she was watching everything. So-min saw things that others missed. She was much more than just an aide, though the aliens did not know that. The debate continued. For hours, alien after alien stood up to speak. Some were against the Velkari plan. Some supported it. Most just wanted to avoid making a decision. Finally, the vote was called. Kyung-ho watched as the results appeared on the big screen at the front of the room. The Velkari expansion doctrine passed by just 12 votes. Overlord Vextar smiled. It was not a nice smile. "The Velkari Empire thanks the Council for their wisdom," he said. "We will begin operations in the target systems immediately." Around the room, aliens began to pack up their things. They talked about lunch plans and upcoming trade meetings. They acted like they had not just condemned millions of beings to slavery and death. Kyung-ho stood up slowly. Every eye in the room turned to him. It was rare for the human representative to speak during regular sessions. Usually, he just listened and took notes. "I request an emergency session of the Council," Kyung-ho said. His voice was calm and clear. "Tomorrow at the same time." Elder Thys floated closer. "May I ask what urgent matter requires immediate attention, Ambassador?" Kyung-ho looked around the room, at the aliens who thought they were so civilized. at the creatures who made rules about trade and territory, but ignored murder and slavery. "Have a proposal for the council," he said. "One that I think will interest everyone here." Overlord Vextar laughed. It sounded like metal scraping against stone. "The young species wants to play politics? How amusing. Very well, human. We will listen to your childish words tomorrow." Other aliens murmured among themselves. Some seemed curious. Others looked annoyed. Most just looked tired. Kyung-ho gathered his papers and walked toward the exit. So-min followed behind him. As they left the crystal chamber, she leaned close and whispered, "Sir, what are you planning?" Kyung-ho did not answer right away. They walked through the long hallways of the council building. The walls were covered with art from 1,000 different worlds. Beautiful paintings and sculptures created by species that had been extinct for millions of years. The council preserved their art, but they had not preserved their lives. When they reached their private shuttle, Kyung-ho finally spoke. "Contact. Earth Command," he said. "Tell them it's time for Phase 2. So-min's eyes widened. Phase 2 was something they had hoped never to use. It was the plan for what to do if the Galactic Council failed to act against tyranny and oppression. That failure had just happened. As their shuttle lifted off from the crystal world of Nexus Prime, Kyung-ho looked back at the council building. Tomorrow he would return to that chamber. Tomorrow he would say words that would change the galaxy forever. The aliens thought humans were young and naive. They thought Earth was just another peaceful species that wanted to trade and explore. They had no idea what humans were really capable of when pushed too far. Tomorrow they would begin to learn. The emergency session began exactly on time. Kyung-ho walked into the crystal chamber and saw that more aliens had come than usual. Word had spread that the human ambassador had something important to say. Creatures that normally skipped regular. Meetings were now floating, crawling, or walking to their seats. Overlord Vextar sat in his place with his arms crossed. His red eyes stared at Kyung-ho with amusement. To him, this was entertainment, a young species trying to play with the adults. Elder Thys hovered near the front. The jellyfish-like alien seemed curious, but also worried. The Thylorians had been in space for millions of years. They had seen many young species try to change things. Most failed. The Chitauri representative clicked its mandibles nervously. The bug-like creature did not like surprises. The Chitauri hive preferred when everything went according to plan. So-min sat in her usual place behind Kyung-ho. She had spent the entire night sending encrypted messages to Earth. Now she watched the room carefully, studying each alien's reaction. Kyung-ho stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. The room became quiet. Even the aliens who usually whispered during meetings stopped talking. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Kyung-ho began. "Yesterday, this body approved the Velkari expansion doctrine. You gave permission for the conquest of 12 star systems. You allowed the enslavement of millions of sentient beings." Overlord Vextar's smile grew wider. "The human speaks of conquest and slavery. These are strong words. We prefer protection and guided labor." Kyung-ho ignored him. He pressed a button on his data pad. Suddenly, the air above the chamber filled with holographic images. They showed things that made several aliens look away in disgust. The first image was a prison camp on a Velkari world. Thousands of alien beings worked in mines under the burning sun. Many were thin and sick. Guards with energy weapons watched them constantly. "This is a Velkari protection center," Kyung-ho said. "The beings you see are from the Corvani system, which the Velkari protected 5 years ago." The next image showed a city burning. Velkari ships flew overhead, dropping bombs on buildings below. In the streets, people ran and screamed. This is the city of New Harmony on Corvani Prime. The population refused to accept Velkari guidance, so the Velkari decided to guide them with fire. More images appeared, children separated from their parents, families torn apart, entire species being wiped out because they would not submit to Velkari rule. Elder Thys floated forward. Ambassador Kyung-ho, where did you obtain these images? The Velkari Empire assures us that their expansion is peaceful. Kyung-ho looked directly at the ancient alien. We obtained them the same way we obtain all our information, Elder Thys. We went and looked for ourselves. This caused a stir in the chamber. Several aliens began talking at once. The idea that humans had been secretly gathering intelligence was shocking to them. For 3 years, Kyung-ho continued, human observers have been documenting crimes across Velkari space. We have recordings of Velkari officers ordering the elimination of problematic populations. We have financial records showing the sale of slaves to other systems. We have the testimonies of thousands of refugees who escaped to human space. Overlord Vextar stood up. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of false innocence. These are lies and fabrications. The human species seeks to undermine Velkari authority with false evidence. Kyung-ho pressed another button. A new hologram appeared. This one showed Overlord Vextar himself, standing in what looked like a command center. He was speaking to other Velkari officers. Eliminate all resistance in Sector 7, the holographic Vextar said. I do not care if they are civilians. Dead examples are better than living problems. The real Vextar's red eyes blazed with anger. How dare you spy on private Velkari communications? How dare you murder children? Kyung-ho replied calmly. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens shouted at each other in dozens of different languages. Some demanded to know more about human intelligence gathering. Others wanted to discuss the evidence against the Velkari. Most just seemed confused and frightened. Elder Thys called for order. Slowly, the noise died down. Ambassador Kyung-ho, the ancient alien said, these allegations are serious. However, the Galactic Council has procedures for investigating such claims. We will form a committee to study this evidence. In perhaps 5 to 10 years, we will have a full report. Other aliens nodded in agreement. The Chitauri representative clicked approvingly. Yes, proper procedures must be followed. Order must be maintained. A delegate from the aquatic ring spoke next. Perhaps we could establish a subcommittee to oversee the main committee, and a review board to examine their findings. More aliens began suggesting new committees and procedures. They talked about forms to fill out and reports to file. They discussed the proper way to investigate genocide while genocide was happening. Kyung-ho listened to all of it. He had expected this response. For 3 years, he had watched the Galactic Council turn every crisis into a bureaucratic exercise. They would rather form a committee than save a life. When the suggestions finally stopped, Kyung-ho spoke again. His voice was still calm, but there was something different about it now. Something cold and final. The Earth government has considered your response, he said. We have decided that humanity can no longer be part of an organization that enables mass murder through inaction. The chamber became silent again. This time, the silence felt dangerous. Therefore, Kyung-ho continued, the human species formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The reaction was instant and explosive. Aliens leaped to their feet, floated higher, or skittered forward. Everyone was shouting at once. Never in the Council's history had a species voluntarily left. Overlord Vextar laughed loudly over the noise. A tantrum from children! The humans take their toys and go home because they cannot have their way. Elder Thys tried to restore order. Ambassador, surely this decision is hasty. The council system has worked for millions of years. Perhaps humanity simply needs time to understand our ways. Kyung-ho shook his head. We understand your ways perfectly, Elder Thys. That is why we are leaving. He began walking toward the exit. So-min stood and followed him. As they moved through the chamber, aliens reached out to stop them or ask questions. Kyung-ho ignored them all. At the door, he turned back one last time. Humanity is forming our own alliance, he said. Any species that wants to actually stop tyranny instead of talking about it is welcome to join us. You are fools, Vextar shouted after them. What can one young species do against the established order? You have no allies, no power, you are nothing. Kyung-ho smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a nice smile. We will see about that, Overlord. As they walked away from the crystal building, So-min spoke quietly. Sir, we do not have authorization from Earth Command for what you just did. Kyung-ho pulled out his communication device. Messages were already waiting from Earth. Messages that had been sent hours ago, before the emergency session even began. Actually, he said, we do. The first message was from the President of Earth. It was short and simple. Phase 2 is authorized. Proceed with alliance formation. Godspeed. The second message was from the Admiral of Earth's Space Navy. Liberation Fleet is ready for deployment. Awaiting your signal. The third message was from someone whose name So-min did not recognize, but Kyung-ho did. It was from the leader of a species that everyone thought was primitive and peaceful, a species that had secretly been building ships and weapons for decades. The message said, the Corvani Liberation Navy stands ready to join our human friends. It is time to make the oppressors pay. So-min's eyes widened as she read the messages. Sir, how many species are already part of this alliance? Kyung-ho looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, ships were moving into position. Plans that had been years in the making were finally beginning. More than the Council knows, he said. Much more. 3 months passed before the Galactic Council met again. When the session began, Elder Thys immediately noticed something wrong. 12 seats were empty. 12 species that had been council members for hundreds of years were simply gone. The first missing species was the Corvani. Elder Thys was not surprised by this. The Corvani had been angry about Velkari expansion into their space, but the others shocked him. The Doraki, who lived in the deep oceans of 100 worlds, had also left. So had the Yithek, whose crystal cities floated in space. Even the peaceful Nex, who spent most of their time growing beautiful gardens, were gone. Where are they? Demanded Overlord Vextar. His red eyes burned with anger. No species just disappears from the Council. The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Tae-jun of the Doraki appeared as a hologram in the center of the chamber. The fish-like alien's gills fluttered as he spoke through the water in his breathing mask. We have not disappeared, Tae-jun said. We have simply chosen better company. Behind him, the Council could see the interior of a massive ship. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The walls curved in impossible ways, and strange lights pulsed throughout the structure. What is the meaning of this? Elder Thys demanded. The Doraki have been council members for 2 million years. Tae-jun's large eyes fixed on the ancient alien. And in those 2 million years, how many times did the Council actually stop a genocide? How many tyrants did you defeat? How many slaves did you free? The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. The Council talked, debated, and formed committees. But they never acted. The humans showed us a different way, Tae-jun continued. They showed us that sometimes you must fight for what is right. The hologram changed. Now it showed the outside of the ship. Around it, hundreds of other vessels moved in perfect formation. Some were human ships with their distinctive angular designs. Others belonged to species that the Council barely knew existed. Overlord Vextar stepped forward. You have been deceived by human lies. They are warmongers who seek to destroy the peace we have built. Another voice echoed through the chamber. This one belonged to Captain Yun-ji of the human vessel Determination. Her image appeared next to Tae-jun's. Peace? She said. You call the systematic oppression of billions of beings peace? You call the destruction of entire worlds stability? Captain Yun-ji was young for a human. but her eyes held the weight of someone who had seen terrible things. She wore the blue uniform of Earth's Liberation Navy, a service that the Council had not known existed until today. For 3 years, she continued, human cultural exchange students have been documenting atrocities across this galaxy. We have evidence of crimes that would make you sick, and we have done something about it. The hologram shifted again. This time it showed a massive fleet stretched across space. Ships of dozens of different designs moved together like a single organism. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. 200 ships, Elder Thais whispered. Where did they come? From? Captain Yunji smiled. The same place they have always been, hidden in plain sight. A new hologram appeared. This one showed Bong Su, a human in military dress. The Council had never seen him before, but his presence commanded attention. He stood in what looked like a war room, with star charts and battle plans covering the walls behind him. Honored Council members, Bong Su said. His voice was polite, but there was steel underneath it. Allow me to introduce myself. I am General Bong Su of the Liberation Alliance Strategic Command. The title meant nothing to the aliens, but the confidence in his voice meant everything. You seem confused about how we accomplished this, Bong Su continued. Let me explain. While you were busy talking, we were busy planning. While you formed committees, we formed alliances. While you debated what to do about evil, we prepared to fight it. Overlord Vextar's 4 arms gestured wildly. This is impossible. Our intelligence networks would have detected such preparations. Bong Su's smile was not pleasant. Your intelligence networks told you that humans were peaceful, traders interested in cultural exchange. How well did that work out for you? The general pressed a button, and the display behind him changed. It showed a map of the galaxy with hundreds of red dots scattered across it. Each red dot represents a human cultural exchange student who has been gathering intelligence for the past 3 years. They attended your universities, worked in your libraries, and visited your museums. They learned your languages, studied your histories, and documented your crimes. The aliens in the chamber looked at each other with growing alarm. How many humans had they welcomed into their worlds? How many secrets had been exposed? But it was not just intelligence gathering, Bong Su continued. Our students also made friends. They found beings who were tired of watching oppression and doing nothing about it. They built networks of like-minded individuals who wanted real change. Another display appeared showing the face of a next gardener. The plant-like alien spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. The humans taught us that some weeds must be pulled by force, the gardener said. The Velkari Empire is such a weed. It has grown too large and chokes out all other life. More faces appeared. A Ythek crystal singer, a young Chitari drone who had rejected the hive mind, a Thylorian poet who had grown tired of ancient wisdom that led to modern suffering. All of them spoke of the same thing. Humans had shown them that action was possible, that someone could stand up to tyrants and win. Elder Thys floated forward, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with agitation. This is madness! You cannot simply attack the Velkari Empire. They have 3,000 ships and the loyalty of dozens of client species, General Bong Su nodded thoughtfully. 3,000 ships. That is indeed a large number. Much larger than our 200. Overlord Vextar's laughter filled the chamber. Finally, the human admits the truth. You are vastly outnumbered. Your little rebellion will be crushed in days. Bong Su's expression did not change. Overlord Vexitar, your mathematics are as poor as your morals. The general pressed another button. The display showed a new image that made every alien in the chamber gasp. It was the Liberation Fleet again. But now they could see its true size. The 200 ships that had been visible before were just the vanguard. Behind them, stretching into the darkness of space, were thousands more vessels. Ships from the Corvani Liberation Navy, which had been building in secret for decades. vessels from the Doraki Deep Fleet, which had been hiding in ocean trenches, warships from a dozen species that the Council had dismissed as too primitive or peaceful to matter. The Liberation Alliance currently fields 4,200 ships, Bongsu said calmly, with more joining every day. The silence in the chamber was complete. Even the background hum of the translation devices seemed to stop. But numbers are not everything, the general continued. The real difference is not in our ships. It is in our purpose. Your forces fight for conquest and profit. Ours fight for freedom and justice. History will show which motivation produces. Better soldiers. Captain Yunji's voice cut through the stunned silence. The Liberation Alliance issues this ultimatum to the Velkari Empire. You have 72 hours to begin evacuating all occupied systems and releasing all prisoners. You will also provide reparations to the worlds you have destroyed. Overlord Vextar found his voice. And if we refuse, then we will free those systems ourselves, Captain Yunji replied. And we will not ask for your permission. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in chaos. Aliens shouted at each other in panic. Some demanded immediate action. Others called for negotiation. Most simply sat in shocked silence. Elder Theiss tried to restore order, but his ancient authority meant nothing now. The galaxy had changed in a matter of hours, and the old ways were crumbling. As the shouting continued, one thought echoed through every mind in the chamber. How had they underestimated the humans so completely? The answer was simple, though none of them would admit it. They had seen what they wanted to see. Young, peaceful traders who would follow the rules and accept the status quo. They had never imagined that humans might have their own rules, and that those rules included a simple principle: evil must be fought no matter the cost. The 72 hours passed in silence. No response came from the Velkari Empire. No evacuation orders were given. No prisoners were released. Admiral Do Yun stood on the bridge of the Liberation flagship New Hope and watched the countdown reach 0. Around him, officers from a dozen different species worked at their stations. The bridge was a miracle of cooperation that the galaxy had never seen before. Time, announced Lieutenant So Young, the human communications officer. No response from Velkari Command. Admiral Do Yun was a small man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 30 years in Earth's Navy before retiring to become a teacher. The Liberation Alliance had called him back to service because they needed someone who understood both war and peace. Signal all fleet commanders, he said quietly. Operation Freedom begins now. Across 7 different star systems, the Liberation fleet struck at the same moment. What happened next would change how the galaxy thought about war forever. In the Corvani system, Captain Minho led a squadron of human ships against a Velkari battle station. The station had massive shields and powerful weapons. It should have been able to destroy the small human force easily, but the humans did not attack the way other species did. Instead of charging forward with guns blazing, they sent out clouds of tiny drones. The drones were too small for the station's weapons to target effectively. They swarmed around the battle station like angry insects. Within minutes, the station's sensors went blind. Its communications were jammed. Its weapons systems stopped working. The great fortress that had terrified the Corvani for years was suddenly helpless. Captain Minho opened a communication channel to the station. This is Captain Minho of the Liberation Navy. Your shields are down and your weapons are disabled. Surrender now, and you will not be harmed. The Velkari commander refused. He tried to ram his crippled station into the human ships. Captain Minho watched sadly as the station broke apart. Some Velkari chose death over defeat. The humans could not save everyone. In the Wythek system, Commander Unsu faced a different challenge. The Velkari had turned the beautiful crystal cities into slave camps. Thousands of Ithek were forced to work in the crystal mines while Velkari guards watched. Commander Yunsu could not simply bomb the camps. That would kill the very people she was trying to save. Instead, she used a tactic that confused the Velkari completely. Her ships landed right in the middle of the slave camps. Velkari guards rushed to attack the human marines as they emerged from their landing craft, but the humans did not fight back immediately. Instead, they put up energy shields and began building something. Within an hour, the humans had constructed a fortified position around the largest group of Ethek prisoners. The Velkari guards could not get through the shields, but they could see what was happening inside. The humans were not just rescuing the Ithek, they were treating their injuries, giving them food and water, and teaching them how to fight. Commander Eun-Su broadcast her message on all frequencies, so every being in the system could hear it. "We are not conquerors," she said. "We are liberators. Any being who wants freedom is welcome to join us. Any being who supports oppression will be stopped." The effect was immediate. Ithek throughout the system began to rise up against their guards. Many Velkari soldiers, faced with the choice between fighting civilians or surrender, chose to surrender. The most dramatic battle took place in the Doraki system. Here, the Velkari had built underwater cities to exploit the ocean world's resources. They thought their position was unassailable. Who would be crazy enough to fight underwater? The answer was Lieutenant Mi Young and her Marine unit. They had trained for underwater combat for 2 years. Their equipment was specially designed for fighting in alien oceans. Most importantly, they had allies that the Velkari never expected. The Doraki themselves rose from the depths to fight alongside the humans. Creatures who had seemed peaceful and helpless suddenly revealed themselves as expert warriors. They knew every current, every trench, every hiding place in their ocean worlds. Lieutenant Mi Young led the assault on the main Velkari command center. Her Marines moved through the water like deadly fish, striking from unexpected directions and disappearing before the enemy could respond. "Remember," she told her troops over their communication system, "we are not here to destroy. We are here to free. Every prisoner we save is a victory. Every tyrant we stop is a step toward peace." The battle was over in 6 hours. The Velkari had never faced an enemy that could move so freely in 3 dimensions. Their tactics were designed for fighting in space or on land. Underwater combat was something they had never prepared for. But it was not just the military victories that shocked the galaxy. It was how the humans fought. Unlike other species who saw war as a test of strength or honor, humans treated war as a problem to be solved. They did not capture enemy ships to add to their own fleets. Instead, they disabled the ships and evacuated the crews to prison camps, where they were treated well and given the chance to change sides. They did not execute enemy commanders. Instead, they put them on trial and broadcast the proceedings across the galaxy. The trials revealed the full extent of Velkari crimes, information that the Galactic Council had ignored for decades. Most shocking of all, they did not claim the liberated worlds for themselves. Instead, they helped the local populations establish their own governments and then moved on to the next system. The Galactic News Network struggled to understand what they were seeing. War was supposed to be about conquest and domination. The humans seemed to be fighting for principles that most species had forgotten. Reporter Suk Jin of the Independent News Network managed to get an interview with Admiral Do Yun during a brief pause in the fighting. The interview was broadcast across the galaxy and changed how many beings thought about the conflict. "Admiral," Suk Jin asked, "your forces are winning battles across multiple systems, but you are not keeping the territory you capture. Why, Admiral?" Do Yun looked tired but determined. "Because we are not fighting to build an empire. We are fighting to tear one down. But surely you could benefit from controlling these systems, the resources, the strategic positions." The Admiral shook his head. "If we conquered these worlds, we would become the very thing we are fighting against. Our goal is not to replace one tyranny with another. It is to ensure that tyranny has no place in this galaxy." The interview continued for an hour. Admiral Do Yun explained the human philosophy of war in simple terms that any being could understand. Fight only when necessary. Use only the force required. Protect the innocent. Respect the defeated. Never forget that the goal is peace, not victory. As the days passed, more species began to join the Liberation Alliance. Some were inspired by human ideals. Others were motivated by practical concerns. The alliance was winning, and many beings wanted to be on the winning side. The Velkari Empire, meanwhile, began to crumble from within. When news of the liberation victories spread, oppressed populations throughout Velkari space started their own rebellions. The Empire's forces were stretched thin, trying to fight both external enemies and internal uprisings. 3 weeks after the war began, Overlord Vextar appeared on galactic news networks to make a desperate plea for help. The once proud leader looked haggard and defeated. "The Galactic Council must act," he demanded. "The humans are destroying the established order. They are encouraging chaos and rebellion. If you do not stop them, your own worlds will be next." The response from Elder Thys was broadcast hours later. The ancient Thalorian's words were careful and measured, but their meaning was clear. The Thalorian Collective has observed the conduct of both sides in this conflict. While we do not approve of war in general, we cannot condemn those who fight against clear injustice. The Council will not intervene on behalf of either party. It was the closest thing to a victory declaration that the diplomatic elder could give. The Liberation Alliance had won not just military battles, but the moral war as well. As the 4th week of fighting began, Admiral Do Yoon received a message that made him smile for the first time since the war started. It was from Captain Jae Min, who commanded the liberation forces in the furthest Velkari system. "Admiral," the message said, "you are not going to believe this. The enemy commander here just surrendered his entire fleet. But here is the strange part. He wants to join us. He says he is tired of fighting for something he does not believe in." Admiral Do Yoon was not surprised. He had been expecting this moment. The Liberation Alliance was not just winning battles. They were winning hearts and minds. And in the end, that was the only victory that truly mattered. 6 months after the first Liberation Fleet attacked Velkari positions, Ambassador Kyung-ho walked into the Galactic Council chamber one last time. The crystal room looked very different now. Half the seats were empty. Many species had either joined the Liberation Alliance or simply dissolved their governments in favor of local rule. The remaining council members looked tired and afraid. Elder Thys floated in his usual place, but his jellyfish-like body had lost its glow. The Chitauri representative clicked nervously, its 6 arms twitching with anxiety. Even the walls seemed dimmer, as if the crystal itself had lost hope. Overlord Vextar was not there. The Velkari Empire had collapsed 3 weeks ago when their own people rose up in revolution. Vextar himself was in a Liberation Alliance prison, awaiting trial for crimes against sentient life. Kyung-ho took his place at the center of the chamber, but now he wore different clothes. Instead of the simple diplomatic robes he had worn for 3 years, he now wore the blue and silver uniform of the Liberation Alliance. His title had changed, too. He was no longer just Earth's ambassador. He was the Alliance's representative to the old Galactic Order. "Honored members," he began, his voice echoing in the half-empty chamber. "I have come to discuss the future of this galaxy." Elder Thys spoke first. His ancient voice was weaker than before. "Ambassador Kyung-ho, the Council acknowledges the success of your alliance. The Velkari Empire is gone. Your goals have been achieved. Surely now we can return to peaceful cooperation." Kyung-ho looked around the chamber, at the aliens who had once seemed so powerful and wise, at the beings who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years through committees and debates while people suffered and died. "The Liberation Alliance's goals have not been achieved," he said quietly. "They have barely begun." This caused a stir among the remaining delegates. The Chitauri representative clicked loudly. "What more do you want? The Velkari are defeated. Their empire is destroyed. The Velkari were just one symptom of a larger disease, Kyung-ho replied. For too long, this galaxy has accepted the idea that some suffering is necessary for the greater good, that some oppression is the price of stability, that some evil is too big to fight. He pressed a button on his datapad. Images filled the air above the chamber. Not the terrible scenes of Velkari crimes this time, but something different, something hopeful. The first image showed a Corvani city that had been rebuilt after liberation. Children played in parks while their parents worked in factories they now owned themselves. The city was more beautiful than it had ever been under Velkari rule. The next image showed former Velkari soldiers working alongside their former prisoners to restore damaged worlds. Many of the Velkari troops had volunteered for this work after learning the truth about their empire's crimes. This is what the galaxy looks like when people are free, Kyung-ho said. When they can make their own choices and shape their own futures. More images appeared. Liberated worlds working together on massive projects. Species that had been enemies for centuries now trading and sharing knowledge. Scientific breakthroughs that came from cooperation instead of conquest. Hanul, the new Secretary General of the Liberation Alliance, appeared as a hologram beside Kyung-ho. She was a young woman with bright eyes and a confident smile. Unlike the tired diplomats of the old council, she radiated energy and hope. The Liberation Alliance operates on a simple principle, Hanul said. Every sentient being has the right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. Any government that denies these rights will face intervention. Elder Tess floated forward, his form pulsing with agitation. You speak of intervention. Do you mean war? Will you attack any world that does not meet your standards? Hanul shook her head. We prefer other methods, economic pressure, diplomatic isolation, support for local resistance movements. But yes, if necessary, we will use military force to stop genocide and slavery. The old council members looked at each other with alarm. This was not how galactic politics was supposed to work. For millions of years, they had operated under the principle that each species could govern its own worlds, however it chose. The idea that outsiders could intervene to protect the oppressed was revolutionary. This is chaos, whispered the representative from the aquatic rings. How can there be order if anyone can be overthrown for being too strict with their subjects? Kyung-ho smiled. It was the same smile he had worn when leaving the council 6 months ago. There can be no true order while injustice exists. There can be no real peace while some beings live in fear. A new voice entered the conversation. Detective In-soo appeared as a hologram in the chamber. He wore the black uniform of the Alliance Investigation Service, an organization that had not existed under the old Galactic Order. We are currently investigating reports of possible oppression in 47 different systems, Detective In-soo announced. Some are members of this council, some are independent worlds, some are former Velkari client states trying to establish their own tyrannies. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several delegates demanded to know how the Alliance dared to investigate sovereign governments. Others wanted to know what gave humans the right to police the galaxy. Detective In-soo waited for the noise to die down before continuing. We investigate because someone must. We act because action is necessary. We succeed because we believe in what we are doing. Kyung-ho stepped forward again. The old Galactic Council is welcome to continue meeting. You can form committees and debate resolutions. You can make speeches about the importance of stability and order. But you should know that the galaxy has moved beyond you. He gestured to the empty seats around the chamber. More than half of your former members have chosen a different path. They have joined the Liberation Alliance not because we forced them, but because we offered them something better. Elder Theiss made one last attempt to maintain the old ways. Ambassador Kyung-ho, the council system has maintained peace for millions of years. Perhaps it is not perfect, but it has prevented major Wars and cosmic disasters. Has it? Kyung-ho asked. How many species went extinct while you debated their fate? How many worlds were destroyed while you formed committees to study the problem? How many children died while you searched for compromise with their killers? Thabat. Ancient Alien had no answer. In all his millions of years of life, Elder Thys had never been asked to count the cost of inaction. The Liberation Alliance offers a better way, Kyung-ho continued. Not perfect. We are not gods, but better. When we see suffering, we act to stop it. When we see tyranny, we fight it. When we see injustice, we correct it. Ha-Nul spoke again, from her hologram. Any member of this council who wishes to join the alliance is welcome. Our only requirements are simple. Treat your people with dignity, respect their rights, and be willing to help when others are threatened. And if we refuse? Asked the Chitauri representative. Then you refuse, Ha-Nul replied with a shrug. We will not force you to join us, but we will watch you. And if you oppress your people or threaten others, we will stop you. The session continued for several more hours, but the real conversation was over. The old galactic order was finished, replaced by something the universe had never seen before. A government based not on the balance of power between species, but on the rights of individuals. As Kyung-ho prepared to leave the chamber for the last time, Elder Thys approached him. The ancient being seemed smaller now, diminished by the changes he could not understand. What makes humans think they have the right to reshape the galaxy? Elder Thys asked. Kyung-ho considered the question carefully. It was the same question he had been asking himself for months. What gave one species the authority to change everything? We do not have that right, he admitted. No one does. But someone had to act. Someone had to say that the suffering was unacceptable. Someone had to be willing to fight for something better. And if you are wrong, if your new order brings more chaos than peace? Kyung-ho looked around the empty chamber one last time, at the seats that would never be filled again, at the system that had protected stability by accepting injustice. Then, we will face the consequences of our choices, he said. But at least we will have tried to do the right thing. Can you say the same? Elder Thys had no answer to that either. As Kyung-ho walked out of the crystal building, he thought about the future. The Liberation Alliance faced many challenges. There were still oppressive governments to deal with. There were worlds to rebuild and people to heal. There were new problems that would require new solutions. But for the first time in galactic history, those problems would be faced by beings who believed that every life mattered, who understood that freedom was worth fighting for, who refused to accept that evil was inevitable. The humans had not sought to rule the galaxy. They had simply refused to let others rule it badly. And in doing so, they had given the universe something it had been missing for millions of years: hope.